Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Hope you're doing well today. My name is Amy Julian, and I'm the director for the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar on Introduction to Special Population Strategies, Super Strategies. Our presenters today are Brittany Boston from the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. She is our Associate Director for Equity and Outreach, and myself, Amy Julian. These strategies were put together in coordination with the Illinois State Board of Education. There are also super strategies that were specifically designed for post-secondary that were created in coordination with the Illinois Community College system. So we're going to focus today a little bit more on these super strategies for secondary, and then there will be a complete series on super strategies for post-secondary, kind of a deeper dive into those. With that, let's kind of go ahead and get started and talk to you about what our day looks like. A couple housekeeping items before we get started. All of you attendees are in listen only mode, which means that you are currently muted. However, that does not mean that you cannot engage with us. So if you have a question, there's a couple ways that you can ask a question. You can raise your hand, or you're able to post those questions in the question box, and we'll be answering those as we go. In addition, if you are wanting to hear this again or additional resources, we'll be sharing the resources for all the super strategies in the chat pane, and then the recording will be available to you following this webinar. So with that, let's kind of look at the agenda real quick. We're going to do an overview of each of the special populations. We're going to briefly provide a summary of the support strategies that are outlined in those super strategy documents. And we're going to discuss equity gaps. You will have opportunities for questions and comments, and we're going to also explore additional resources. And as I said, we'll put the links to the super strategies in the chat box, and go ahead and get started. Before we dive in, I want to share with you just one little last comment here. So when you're looking at special populations and Perkins V, we've expanded special populations. And for the first time since our 1983 legislation was passed, we did have an expansion of the special populations. So they're listed there on the screen there for you. Special populations do include individuals with disabilities, economically disadvantaged students, students pursuing non-traditional fields or occupations, English learners, homeless youth, foster care youth, military-connected youth, and pregnant and parenting teens. Now, each of these super strategies really dives into and explores ways that we can support each of these different special populations. And I'm going to hand the floor over now to Brittany, and she's going to walk us through each of the super strategies.
Yes, thank you so much. So as Amy said, my name is Brittany Boston, and we will go through some of the definitions of the special populations, and we're going to just sort of touch the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the support strategies. This is a topic that both Amy and myself are very passionate about and could probably talk about each individual special population for hours. So we're going to try and keep it to time. We also want to allow time for discussion and questions, but I will encourage you to check out the super strategies on our website and really dig into those. They will be linked on the ending slide here as an additional resource as well. So let's go ahead and dive into who exactly our special population students are. So students with disabilities. This is the definition comes from the Americans with Disabilities Act. And to sort of sum that up, it is an individual with a cognitive or physical disability or impairment that impacts their life and the activities that they are able to contribute and participate in. So how do we support these individuals and individuals with disabilities? And so you'll see throughout the presentation today that a lot of the support services and the strategies can overlap from the differing special populations, and also special populations. Just because a student may fall into one category doesn't mean they can't fall into another. And so there really is no pigeonholing here with special populations. They all spider web into one another. So when we're looking at students with disabilities specifically, we want to keep in mind the wide range of disabilities that are included here. So cognitive and physical impairments, and not only the wide range of individual disabilities, but even the range within a specific disability. So, let's say specifically we're talking about individuals with autism. Um, the the levels vary from person to person. So we really want to make sure that we're taking into account how each individual student is being impacted and the unique barriers that they face. And so also looking at and providing information on training to staff, and not only staff, but students on Section 504 and Title II and the protections that these laws put in place for students with disabilities, and the protections and the anti-discrimination that it puts in place for those individuals. And also looking at implementing universal design for learning. We actually, ICSPS, Amy actually did a series on UDL not too long ago, which will also be linked in our additional resources. But it is the concept of universal design for learning is really looking at creating a space, environment, curriculum that is accessible for all learners, and looking at those different learning styles and abilities for all students. And one of the things that I find interesting with UDL is that the more and more research that we do on the brain and the more information that we gather on the brain, we're really discovering that our brains are more like fingerprints. The structure and the systems are all similar, but they really do differ from person to person and the experiences that they encounter in the environment that they're from. So please check out that UDL series. And if you want more information on UDL, always reach out to us as well. And then making sure that we're creating and promoting an inclusive school environment. That's one of the reasons I mentioned sharing that Section 504 and Title IX, not only with staff, but with students. We really want to make sure that we are breaking down that stigma that can be attached to not only students with disabilities, but for all special population students. And when we're talking about promoting an inclusive school environment, we're talking about not only social and physical interactions that we may have, but also the building itself. We want to make sure that all students are able to access the classrooms, the gym, the bathroom. We want them all to be able to access the areas that they need to go in order to learn and be successful and feel comfortable within their school. And then teaching students strategies on self-advocacy. And this is a big one because once these students graduate and transition on into employment or post-secondary or whatever the case may be for their goals and their plan, they really have to advocate for themselves and for the services and supports that they need. And so especially when we're looking at high school students, really teaching them the strategies to have those conversations with their employers or with their future educators and instructors. And not only the students, but maybe also including the parents or the adults that are in this student's life as well. And maybe having, I'm sure those might be some difficult conversations. I have two little ones of my own, and so you're talking about my babies there, but having those conversations with the parents that at some point they do need to learn those strategies to self-advocate and to speak up for themselves and the things that they need as well. So economically disadvantaged students, this definition actually comes from ESSA, or the Every Student Succeeds Act. So when we're talking about economically disadvantaged students, we're talking about students that come from families who are receiving public aid or possibly living in an institution. This also includes those students that are being supported in foster homes. So like I said, many of the special populations overlap. So this is one of those where economically disadvantaged students is including foster care youth, which is its own separate special population as well. And we're also talking about students who are eligible to receive free and reduced price lunches. Economically disadvantaged students is one of those special populations that really, it's an umbrella special population. If I can use that sort of terminology, it really spiderwebs into the other special populations as well. So check out this other super strategies for the special populations, and all the super strategies and support strategies that we're talking about today can be accommodating for this individual group as well. And then looking at offering counseling services throughout the semester. And I do want to note that some of these may be things that your program and your school are already doing. So this is no way us saying that you're not doing this, but just some refreshers for individuals who may be new, or hopefully some ideas and some inventive ways that maybe you haven't thought of before. But really checking in with students, seeing how how they're progressing, not only with their academics, but also, how's their home life doing? How are their interactions with the adults in their lives? Because, we know that their home life and the outside world really does impact the way students are able to learn, and distractions and how they take in information, and how they behave in a classroom or an educational environment. And so just checking in with the students, setting goals with them, giving them something to work towards, and encouraging them along the way. And then having information readily available for the support services that are provided within your community or within your school. And along the same lines, promoting all of those services to the entire student body and to all families to sort of avoid that stigma. And that could be something as simple as, now that we're finding ourselves more in a virtual world, having those available in a format on your website, or once we go back face to face, or if you are face to face, having a resource table that could be, accessed from the main office, or once we start doing parent-teacher conferences, having a resource table set up in your classroom that parents and families can look through at their own time without feeling as though, there's that stigma or someone looking over their shoulder. And then the next one, I know in the last year or so, Amy and I had the chance to visit a few schools. And so I know some of you guys are already doing this, but working with students and assisting them in researching scholarships and completing their FAFSA. I know many of the schools that I talked to, they have a FAFSA night where families are invited to come in, and they have tables set up where they're able to have those conversations and get questions answered, and find out all of the information and materials that are needed to complete those. And again, we're in a virtual world. Maybe that's a Zoom FAFSA night, the way it looks this year, but being available to those students who maybe don't have the individuals that they can ask those questions to. Maybe they're the first of their family to go to college, and so helping and assisting them in that process. And then providing training to teachers and counselors and staff in general on trauma-informed care. And this is really another strategy that spreads across all of the special populations. As I was saying before, we all have our trauma, and that really impacts how we engage with others, how we take information in, how we process things. And honestly, we're all currently living through, a trauma event. We're living through a pandemic. The majority of our lives and our routines have been turned upside down, and it has a huge impact, and especially on our younger students, on how they engage and, how they process things. Students interested in non-traditional fields. So non-traditional fields are those occupations or fields that you have an individual from one gender that makes up less than 25% of the individuals employed. So you'll see some examples there on the screen, and this is in no way, shape, or form an exhaustive list, but just wanted to kind of get your mind thinking here. So when we talk about non-traditional fields, we're talking about women in welding, law enforcement, women in IT, and then for men, it's, you know, early childhood education, nursing, social work, etc. Because like I said, there are more for both as well. And when it comes to supporting students interested in non-traditional fields, it's really important to look at our own bias and even maybe bias that we may not be aware of, and who we're promoting and sharing these CTE programs with. Do we find ourselves only mentioning welding to our male students? Do we find ourselves only having conversations about, becoming an educator or a teacher to our female students? And really taking a look within ourselves and making sure that we aren't letting our own unintentional bias affect how we're sharing information with our students. And along the same lines, sharing and presenting all of the CTE programs to students, not only of all genders, but of all abilities as well. And using that inclusive language when, we're sharing out flyers or, marketing information or material, making sure that, when we're talking about firefighters, that we're saying firefighters and not firemen or policemen. And that's something that, I have a 4-year-old, that's something that I've started with him already. So that's something that we can start as an early age, making sure that, we're informing our students and having that dialogue with them in a way that doesn't give a career a gender, because we all know that careers do not have genders. Careers are for all. And then using commonly understood terminology. So when you talk to a student or when you talk to their parents or the adult figure in their life, they may not know what a non-traditional occupation is or a non-traditional field. And for a student, who's 13, 14 years old, being quote unquote non-traditional may not be the cool thing to do. So for Perkins V, it's referred to as non-traditional. But when you're sharing that information out, making sure that you're using understood and acceptable terminology as well. And then we all know that the research shows that the sooner we can expose our students to these types of careers, the sooner we can initiate that hands-on experience, the more likely they are to become interested in these programs and within CTE. The saying, you don't know what you don't know. Students can't show interest in a career or an occupation if they don't know that it exists. And then establishing mentoring programs. And this could be either, a club or a support group within the school among students, or it could even be if you've had students who have graduated and have gone on to be successful in what is considered a non-traditional occupation for them, having them come back and share with the class, or having them reach out to a particular student who is also interested in a non-traditional occupation. And again, these can be face-to-face, or in our virtual world, it can be a Zoom call or a Teams call, whichever platform you're using. And being able to give that student an individual who can speak to some of the barriers and obstacles that they are currently facing, and showing them that it can be done, it can be accomplished, and you can be successful in a quote unquote non-traditional occupation as well. And then making sure that we're reviewing all of our materials and processes to make sure that they don't contain any advertently discriminatory message. So as I mentioned before, saying firemen or instead of firefighter, making sure that we're not using predominantly male pronouns or female pronouns, that we are using that inclusive language and having those inclusive processes in place. So English learners, this definition also comes from ESSA. There's a lot There's a lot of words on that screen right now, I know. So I'm not going to read all of that out for you word for word, but we are looking at those individuals aged 3 through 21 who are either currently enrolled or preparing to enroll in elementary or secondary school and whose native language is not English. They may not have been born in the US, and their first language spoken at home is not English. So when we talk about supporting English learners, again, we want to make sure that we provide information and training to all staff and students, especially on that Title IX, because that really discusses, and how it prohibits discrimination based on race, color, national origin. And then providing training to staff also on current immigration laws. And this is important not only to help everyone understand the protections that are in place for these students, but also the limitations as well, because as we know, these change, and we want to make sure that we are providing the best services we can to our students. And then also modeling being a language learner. So allowing your English learner students to share their different cultures and traditions, and maybe it's a holiday or a family tradition that they have, and sharing that with their teachers and their peers. And then using a variety of teaching modalities. Again, this goes across the board and really for all students. We know that all students have different learning styles, and we want to make sure that we're being accommodating as best as we can to those different learning styles, whether they're visual learners or hands-on learners, really doing what we can to accommodate all of those various learning styles. And then making sure that we're providing opportunities for students to interact with each other, both English learners and non-English learners, in and out of the classroom. So whether it's a multicultural student group that you get started and encourage your students to participate in, or as I mentioned before, the school project of sharing a tradition from their culture or from their family with the student body in their classroom. And then also making sure that any documents, enrollment documents, or information that is being shared out from the school, whether it's support services, whether it's extracurricular activity information, if you have a language other than English that is spoken in your school, you want to make sure that that information is being translated as well, because we want to communicate as best as we can with all of our families, all of our students. And along the same lines, asking parents or caregivers what forms of communication work best for them. So for any of you who may have learned another language, you know that sometimes you can read it better than you can when someone is speaking it to you. So that may be, a text or an email versus a phone call. And then making sure that you're weaving those multiple languages that you have within your school into the different events and celebrations that you have occurring, and making sure that you're paying homage to the different traditions and holidays that that are celebrated within your student body. So homeless youth is defined in the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. And so again, lots of words on the screen, so I'm not going to read it word for word to you. But to sum it up, it is a student or family who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. So this could be the terminology of quote unquote couch surfing. Maybe they're moving from a friend's house one night to another friend's house the next night, or they're living in their car, or some public space that was not meant to be a regular sleeping area for them. And it also mentions in there those who are awaiting foster care placement. So that little transition phase of, being with living with your biological parents, but then being removed from your biological family and you're awaiting to be placed in a foster care home. So the McKinney-Vento Act does ask that all school districts have an appointed local homeless education liaison. And so this is an individual that is responsible for making sure that students who qualify under this homeless category are identified and are offered and aware of the appropriate services that are available to them under this act. And so that second bullet point kind of falls in line with that as well, and just making sure that you're informing all students and their families about their rights and services under this act, and that we're sharing that information with everyone, again, to sort of break down that stigma and that barrier that can be attached to experiencing homelessness. And then this is great to also build those partnerships and develop those relationships with agencies or entities within your community that also help support these students. So whether that's a dropout prevention program or shelters, law enforcement, really combining your powers, so to speak, to make sure that these students as well as their families are getting the supports and services that they need to be successful. And then providing, again, kind of where that trauma-informed care comes into play, providing staff with professional development and training about the specific barriers, that students face when they're experiencing homelessness. When you're concerned with where you're going to be sleeping later tonight, or where your next meal is coming from, or where you're going to be able to take another shower. It's kind of hard to focus on, calculus or language arts. And so making sure that we're aware that sometimes, it may not be that a student doesn't care or is lazy. It's just that they're facing real big adult problems that, at that age, they're not necessarily equipped to handle and deal with in a productive way. Foster care youth. So when we talk about foster care, we are talking about youth or children that are receiving temporary services by a state agency. And so in this case in Illinois, that would be DCFS. And they have been removed from their home for whatever reason. The terms DCFS uses is neglect or abuse, and that has varying definitions as to what neglect and abuse means based on the situation. And so they are either placed with relatives or with foster parents. And this can also refer to those who are in group homes, residential care facilities. They may be in emergency shelters or supervised independent living. And so in Illinois, an individual ages out or exits the foster care system at the age of 21. So once they turn 21, they are no longer, in foster care, considered a ward of the state. And so that's important to note, because that age does vary from state to state. And so currently in Illinois, it is the age of 21. So how can we support foster care youth? And again, I do want to make note that all of these support strategies are the tip of the iceberg for these special populations. There are so many more within the super strategies, and so many more that are coming up and people are researching and learning about, and especially with these newer special populations that have been added. So please don't take these as an exhaustive list, and definitely jump in and do your research and find out some more strategies as well. But when you're talking about foster care youth have a lot of players in their lives. They have a lot of different entities involved, anywhere from the court system to their social worker to their foster parents. Some of them still have visits with their biological parents. And so you want to
And
make,
I
you
was just
want
going
to,
to say, and this is a
okay.
new special population for CTE. So this is not one that we've been with for a while. This is going to be an opportunity for you to really foster new partnerships in how you serve these students. And Brittany's going to talk a little bit more about that, but understand that we're all learning together and really engaging with foster care youth. And it's not a population that has really been around for the, it's not like the single parents who we've got tons of research on that you can call over to Nebraska or to Iowa and say, hey, how are you addressing this? This is something that's new. But the best part about this being new is that really all of us are jumping in together and all of us are looking at how we can best serve these students together. So there are a lot of resources out here, but I just wanted to make you aware that some of these, like non-traditional, we've been talking about that since Title IX, but the special pop being a foster care youth is new in Perkins 5. Sorry, Brittany, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. Yeah, absolutely. And the next couple of ones I believe are the newer additions to our Perkins Special Populations Party. So like Amy said, when you're dealing with talking about foster care youth and supporting these individual students, you want to build those partnerships. So really looking at, the child welfare agency within your community, and building and opening up a dialogue and communication with that individual, because what we don't want to happen is we want to make sure that we aren't duplicating services and that the students are receiving the appropriate wraparound services that they need in order to be successful, and that each agency, whether it's the school or the welfare agency, or if you have a community action within your area, whatever the case may be, we want to make sure that every agency knows what their role is, because what we don't want to have happen and what we want to try to avoid is sort of that hamster wheel idea of just running in place and spinning the wheel. We're providing services, we're doing what we can, but we're not propelling that student forward because we're not building off of what each individual agency or individual that's involved in the student's life, we're not building off of those. And so we want to, like I said, propel that student forward and not duplicate any of the services. And then also, again, that trauma-informed care, I feel like a parrot or a broken record, but it's so important that we as educators and staff and counselors are informed of trauma-informed care and how that impacts our students and the strategies that we can use to better support them and reach them better as well. And then again, like with individuals with disabilities, we want to make sure that we teach these students the strategies to advocate for themselves, because eventually they will be leaving the foster care system, and they may or may not, depending on the outcome, have the support of their biological parents or their biological families, because those ties may be severed. And so making sure that we teach these students how to advocate for themselves in the workforce and in post-secondary education, if that's the path that they choose. And so one of the other new additions to our special populations party is military connected youth. And so this is a youth who has a parent or parents that is a member of the armed forces and is on active duty. And so Perkins 5 is very specific as to what that qualifies as well. And so when we look at supporting this particular special population, military youth, they may have a parent who is overseas, they may have a parent who is deployed, they may move and come to your school during mid-year. And so looking at your current policies and procedures and making sure that as best as you can that you're accommodating these students and making that transition for a student who might be enrolling mid-year as smooth and as timely as possible. And then including on, that enrollment form, a place where parents can determine what their preferred form of communication is. And so if someone has a parent who is deployed, they may be able to, do a Zoom parent-teacher conference rather than a face-to-face conference, or sorry, yeah, parent-teacher conference. And again, that falls into place with this new virtual world that we live in. I think if we have learned anything from 2020, we have learned to be adaptable and flexible, and using Zoom and those virtual platforms, even once we are face to face, can be a benefit to our different families and parents and adults in our students' lives as well. And then again, like I said, allowing for flexibility with parent meetings, whether it's a webcam or a call-in option, just trying to be as adaptable as we can for the different makeup of the families that our students have. And then encouraging students to get involved in school, to volunteer, to get involved within the community, to do an extracurricular activity, to help them feel connected and in control. As a young individual, having one of your parents in the military and on active duty or deployed, it can probably be stressful and you may feel disconnected. And so encouraging them to find that connection and that support within the community and within the school is great. And then maybe even reaching out to staff in neighboring districts. Maybe you don't have a large population of students who have parents in the military, but connecting with other districts and seeing if they do, and creating a support group for those students among the districts where they can, communicate over email, or, do joint projects, start a club, and just feel like they can, converse with individuals who are in a similar situation and may understand better what it is they're experiencing and the emotions that they're feeling, having a parent in the military. And staying abreast and staying aware of any legal guidance that pertains to military connected students as well, because as a military connected youth, there are different laws and services that are available to them, and so we want to make sure that as staff and educators that we are aware of those. Pregnant and parenting teens. So when we talk about pregnant and parenting teens, pregnant teens, single teen mothers, we're also talking about single teen fathers as well. And then also parenting teens. If they're a couple who are, doing the parenting life together, we want to include them as well. So supporting pregnant and parenting teens, we want to look at any policies and procedures that we have in place, especially when it comes to absenteeism and truancy. Under Title IX, pregnant and parenting teens are protected under that law, and we cannot discriminate against them based on pregnancy or their parenting status. We want to make sure that we ensure reasonable accommodations for students both during and after pregnancy. And so this could be anywhere from a pregnant teen maybe needing a larger desk or area to sit, having a private room where a nursing mother can accommodate and access when she needs it, and also providing these supports and services to parenting fathers as well. We don't want to assume that they are uninvolved, and we want to make sure that when we share out these services and supports that we have for them, that we're including fathers as well in that. And then really utilizing and engaging the school nurses so they can help aid in pregnancy identification, referrals to quality prenatal care, knowing the different resources that are available to teen parents and pregnant teens within the community, providing parenting education, referrals to clinical services, healthcare, all that is involved with pregnancy and being a parent. And then allowing students to have access to instruction and class even during their maternity and paternity leave. And so if they are able to, allowing them to maybe do a Zoom call once a week with, their counselor or a teacher to check in, see how things are going, inform them of, what's been happening in the classroom, what's, the topic that they're learning about, and just trying to keep that connection, even once they are on maternity or paternity leave. And again, support groups. It's, I feel like, again, that's another thing I'm a broken record on is support groups, but we want to make sure that students have and know that there are others that are going through the same things they're going through and that they have someone to talk to. And as a teenager, it was a while ago, but I still remember what it was like to be a teenager, talking to my parents or talking to an adult. It's like you forget when you're a teen that adults were also teenagers. So being able to have their peers and talking to people their age who can relate to them on their level can help them feel connected and supported in a way that unfortunately we as adults may not be able to do.
Well, and Brittany, that step to isolation, especially in the era of COVID, is so
Yes.
quick right now. And teens can easily feel isolated if they are in any situation, but also if they happen to be as one of the special populations. So if you are pregnant and you are 16 and you're feeling that, you're all alone in this, having a support group and also having faculty and administrators that show that they care. It's not the same as a support group, but it's also very necessary. And I know we talked about that, engagement with school nurses and allowing students to have access to academic instruction. But one of the key things that allows students to retain in a program or allow students to come back after pregnancy or allow students to be successful is that we feel that, or they feel that we've invested in them. So by engaging with them, and virtually is a little bit different, but it's also just as important. Having those Zoom meetings, sending those emails, messaging them during the day. How are you doing? How's everything going? Just checking in. The trauma of COVID, the trauma of what our entire world is going through right now is not going to be unnoticed, but there are little things that we can do that will make a big difference for our students. And those are some of the tips and things that are really easy to do. And again, if you think about it from your own perspective, it would be nice, and it is always nice to know that people do care and are concerned and are invested in you. And it goes for our students as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm now going to hand it back over to Amy, and she's going to talk about some of the strategies on how to support special populations in CTE. And this one was made its own slide because, again, like I've been saying throughout the whole thing, some of these strategies overlap. And when it comes to the secondary system in CTE, you're informing students. You're not quote unquote recruiting students, but you want to make sure that you're informing them about the CTE programs and the options that are available to them. So for those strategies, I'm going to hand it over to Amy.
Thank you, Brittany. And I want to also point out in the chat there, you should be able to see some great resources that I posted. One is our Special POPs resources. We, as Brittany said, did a complete series on UDL in the CTE classroom. It's a 4-part series. The last is really more of a discussion, but the first 3 are recorded with slides, so absolutely engage with those. And then the super strategies themselves, so to be able to print those documents. In addition, if you see those documents and say, you know what, I'd love a hard copy of this, send us an email. Our email's on there, ICSPS at illinoisstate.edu, 2 S's in the middle there, and we'll mail you out copies of the super strategies documents while they last. What we want to dive into now is just some fun strategies around supporting special population students and career and technical education. So these four bullets are very important. We've kind of touched on them on a skim level, but let's dive in a little deeper. So inform students about the different career options within career and technical education and how they can get started during high school. All of the special populations are areas that can excel, that do excel in any program, and we really want to be able to inform our students about the different career options. Partner with your post-secondary friends over at the community colleges and look at what programs that they have that can support students as well. And there's some really great career options. One of the other things that's my next bullet, partner with your community college for CTE career exploration days, looking at those programs that are available in your area. Look at program directories that are available online. Emphasize potential earning and timelines for program completion. So that is something that in talking with many teenagers, they sometimes understand and sometimes don't understand what potential earning looks like, what a sustainable wage is, what timelines are, what are those factors that play a role in completion of a degree or program. And some of them will get a little excited and others will get a little reserved about looking at program completion. So have those frank and honest conversations and have them talk with the administrators and CT partners at your community college to really talk about earning potential, because that really does play an impact in their future life goals. And then inform students of supports and services available to them at the community colleges. So our goal is to transition our students to post-secondary or to the workforce or to military or to somewhere. I joke that my goal as a parent is to make sure my kids are successful citizens, contributing citizens to this world. And I wanted the same for my students when I taught. So inform our students of what support services are out there. Some of our students that we've talked about today, individuals with disabilities being both cognitive and physical, are going to have to do a little bit of self-advocating once they get to the post-secondary level, whether that be the community college or the university. And so we want to prepare them for that self-advocating and help them understand what that looks like. Your IEP does not necessarily follow you, so what do you need to do to self-advocate? In addition, you want to be sure that parents understand that role of post-secondary education. They're adults. So they need to do the self-advocating. It's no longer quite the team effort that it occurs in the K-12 system. Again, any questions or concerns, go ahead and post those in the question box, and we're just going to go ahead to the next slide. So just a couple things to think about. As you look at what we've talked about today, as you looked at the super strategies, and I encourage you to download those, but consider where are your program equity gaps and how might your program utilize these super strategies. I've been talking on universal design now since June, and I will tell you that the adage or the point of a small change makes a big difference applies to our service of equity and special populations as well. So what is something that you learned today? Well, maybe it's a support group. Maybe it's a different strategy that you learned that you want to put into play either in your curriculum, in your school, or talk with your teachers about how might you or your program utilize these super strategies. So think about that. I'd like you to, if you can, post those in the chat. How are you going to use this information as we go to our next slide, which is what questions do you have? So we're happy to answer any questions, but I want you to tell kind of a reflection. What's your takeaway from the day? What's something that you're going to use that you're going to implement right away? Go ahead and post those in the question box as you move into your day tomorrow, as you start your Thursday. What is something that you can use or something that you learned? If there's not anything that you think I can do tomorrow, what is a big takeaway that you learned today? And while we're waiting on those to pop in, we're going to put our contact information up here so you're able to get a hold of us if you have any questions, concerns, or comments. And again, the links to those wonderful resources, again, I am a little biased, but the wonderful resources are there on the screen. So let's look at the chat there.
And I would also encourage you when you are popping onto our website to look at those super strategies and that universal design for learning webinar. Feel free to, jump around and look at some of the other resources and recorded webinars that we have available. Even recently with COVID, we've done a lot of webinars on the impact of COVID, the trauma of COVID, whatever other buzzwords we can add to with COVID. We've provided some information on those. So definitely search around, type in the search box some stuff that you're interested in, see what other resources we have available as well.
And we do have some individuals saying they're going to involve individuals who have been successful in non-traditional careers to partner with current students. Mentors are so important and such a great resource for your students and for your program. So I'm excited to see that. So great. And thank you for sharing that. We have others who are going to talk with their counselors about non-traditional fields. That's fantastic. Share with your counselors. They are definitely a part of the CTE team and should be. If you're not talking with your counselors, that's one little group that you should have at your party. And then also if you're not communicating with your post-secondary individuals, or if you are a post-secondary person and you're not communicating with your secondary person or EFE, we want to encourage all kinds of collaboration and communication. Again,
Yes.
shooting an email, grabbing on a Zoom is a lot easier than the 2019 way of life of going to meetings. So you can do it with your slippers on. So we do encourage that communication, collaboration, and coordination between both secondary and post-secondary.
Yes, we're all about partnership here, all about partnership.
We do have one person saying they're going to try to initiate hands-on activities in an online environment. There are some great tools out there to assist with that. As a parent, I have a student, well, my child student, who does quite a few experiments that he then records and sends into his teacher. So I think there's opportunity to do hands-on activities or opportunity to do guided practice to demonstrate those things in the online environment. Also, don't forget that Zoom links right into your whiteboards. So that's a great little tip. If you're wanting to demonstrate something on a whiteboard that you would be writing on the board in class, you can write on the board and Zoom will pick that right up and run with it. So just a fun little tip there. So thank you all for commenting today. We are about 8 minutes early. So with that, Brittany, do you have any other closing comments?
No, I just want to thank you guys for participating. Like I said, this is something that Amy and I could probably stay on the webinar and talk for hours about. We're really passionate and adamant about making sure that, all students have access to and the tools that they need in order to be successful, not only in CTE programs, but in their academic career and their employment across the board. So please feel free to contact us, email us with any questions you might have, any resources that you're wondering if we have any webinars or materials on. We are here to share our work with you as best as we can. So thank you so much for joining us. We will be sharing and posting this PowerPoint on our website as well. So you will actually be able to have access to those links that are shared on there. So I would say within maybe this week or beginning of next week, the PowerPoint and the recording will be shared out on the website, our website as well.
And before we wrap up, just one last little thing. You will get an email tomorrow. It'll be from the GoToWebinar system. It will have an evaluation on there as well as a link to where those resources will be shared. So if you could please take a minute, and it literally will only take 1 to 2 minutes, and complete that evaluation. That helps us improve our professional development, and it also helps us meet our deliverables for ISBE, which we always want to do. So just take a minute, fill that out, let us know what we did well and what you'd like or what we could improve on, and then also ways in which we can better serve and meet your needs. So thank you so much. Have a great day. In my part of the state, it looks beautiful and clear, but incredibly windy outside. So have a wonderful day.
And Amy, we did have one quick question come in about when we plan to have a similar webinar for community colleges. So Jen, you are reading our thoughts apparently, because we are in the works of getting that together and sort of breaking down the special populations and recruitment and support strategies for the community colleges when it comes to those special populations as well. So keep an eye out for that. That is coming down the road.
That is one other thing. If you do not get our monthly newsletter and our communications, you would have got one this morning if you do. And if you're not getting those communications, let us know. Send us an email at icsps@illinoisstate.edu and we'll get you on that list. If you attended the forum, you are automatically signed up. Congratulations. But if you didn't get it or if it went to your junk, let me know and we'll be sure to get you included. Thank you all so much for your time today.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a great day.